your dark desire.
They shall know my
The X-Men animated series is hands down the best X-Men project ever made, and the 5th episode of the series showcased one of the most terrible and brutal massacres in animated television history. However, we still don't have any information about who might be responsible for this tragedy, but don't worry, in today's video we have a few theories and a list of suspects, so let's go over them. But before we get started with the video, we have a small request for you. If you like our content, subscribe to us and like this video. It might be just a simple click for you, but it means a lot to us. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's get started.
Roll! Get to the gardens! Hurry!
Genosha Mutant Massacre. The 5th episode of the X-Men 97 animated series started with the news anchor conducting interviews with the X-Men to celebrate the United Nations, recognizing Genosha as a mutant nation. To celebrate this historic win, Magneto, Rogue, and Gambit traveled to Genosha to prepare for the celebrations and banquet. Upon arrival, they find Genosha completely lit up and ready for the celebrations. However, they were completely oblivious that tonight would be one of the darkest pages in the history of mutants. Later, Magneto was offered leadership over Genosha, but he had one condition. He'd take over Genosha's leadership only if Rogue served in the council as his queen. When he asked Rogue, she was initially hesitant, but since this was for the greater good of the mutants, she agreed to Magneto's request. Thus, she meets Gambit and tells him that they can't be together. Gambit was heartbroken, but still decided to respect her decision and stayed friends with her. When the banquet commenced, Magneto and Rogue officially declared their relationship in front of the world with a kiss. However, Madeline Pryor, who was also at the event, started getting psychic attacks and stepped outside for some fresh air. Once outside, she comes face to face with Cable, who was here to warn the X-Men about the impending doom. But before he can warn Madeline, he is sucked back in time and the mutants are attacked with a massive energy blast. As Rogue, Magneto, and Gambit regained their senses, they discovered a Godzilla Sentinel was wreaking havoc in Genosha and massacring the mutants. Thus, all the mutants run to safety. However, when Magneto learns that the Morlocks are still trapped near the Sentinels, he enlists Gambit and Rogue's help to rescue them. Thus, we see an epic battle between Magneto and the all-powerful Godzilla Sentinel. However, the battle ends with Magneto's defeat, and the Sentinel launches a huge energy blast at him and the Morlocks. He tries to protect them with the help of an energy shield, but it is not strong enough, and Magneto meets his demise at the hands of the Sentinel. After watching Magneto die, an enraged Rogue charges forward to attack the Sentinel, but Gambit stops her and takes on the Sentinel by himself. However, his attempts were futile as the Godzilla Sentinel managed to impale Gambit with a rod. Gambit was mortally wounded, but this did not stop him. He used the last of his strength to charge the entire giant Sentinel with his kinetic energy and made it explode, killing it in the process. In the end, Gambit also met his demise, and Rogue broke down completely because she had lost both the persons she loved in just a matter of hours. This was one of the most brutal and tragic events in the history of the mutants because countless mutants perished in the attack. And the worst part is that neither the X-Men nor Professor X was there to help them. Who is behind Genosha Mutant Massacre? The Genosha Mutant Massacre is probably one of the most tragic and terrible events to ever happen in the X-Men animated series. And the worst part is we still don't know who's exactly responsible for this massacre. Although the 6th episode of the X-Men 97 gives us a glimpse of who might be responsible for these events, we still don't have a concrete answer. However, by diving deep into the comic books and other X-Men episodes, we've identified 5 key suspects who may be responsible for this tragedy. Let's go over them one by one. Bolver Trask. The first and the most obvious suspect from the plot perspective is Bolver Trask, a prominent mutant hater who had already been set up in the very first episode of X-Men 97. And we also got some undeniable proof in the final moments of the recently released 6th episode on Disney+. We see Bolver Tres running away from a mysterious figure claiming that he gave him his DNA to access the master mold. However, Bolver was caught and started begging the mysterious figure to kill him because he was feeling guilty for what happened in Genosha. Soon, the mysterious pursuer is revealed to be Mr. Sinister, the main villain of this season. Sinister claims that the Mutant Massacre in Genosha was just a prologue, and even more catastrophic events are yet to unfold. This proves that Bolver Tres indeed had a hand in the massacre in Genosha. However, this time, he wasn't acting of his own accord and was being controlled by Mr. Sinister. But we also doubt that Sinister might not be the real mastermind behind the attack. There's a high possibility that someone else might be orchestrating all of these events from the shadows. Mr. Sinister. Our second proven culprit is none other than Sinister. The conclusion of episode 6 made it clear that Sinister played a role in the Mutant Massacre in Genosha. However, his motives behind the attack still remain a mystery. We all know that Sinister isn't a madman to just massacre countless mutants without any reason. There has to be a reason behind his attack in Genosha. Is he being manipulated by someone else? Is he trying to get his hands on Madeline Pryor? Or is he trying to collect DNA samples from all the Genosha mutants to create something powerful enough to take down all the X-Men? We don't have a clear answer yet. Moreover, Mr. Sinister was also responsible for one of the most tragic mutant massacres in the comics. During one event, he created a team of evil mutants called Marauders and sent them to kill the Morlocks. Considering how the Morlocks were trapped during this whole skirmish in Genosha, it is possible that Sinister's real goal was to eradicate the Morlocks. However, we should not forget that we have seen the mutant killer Nimrod in the opening credits of the 6th episode. Thus, there's also a very strong possibility that Sinister might use Nimrod to get rid of the mutants. Although, it isn't clear why Sinister would go to such lengths. Our next suspect might just be the answer behind Sinister's actions. Apocalypse. You might think this is far-fetched, but if you dive into the comics, Apocalypse was the one responsible for the creation of Mr. Sinister, and even in the X-Men animated series, Sinister has served Apocalypse as his servant. In the 18th episode of the 4th season of X-Men, the animated series, titled Beyond Good and Evil Part 1, Sinister kidnaps Jean Grey right after her wedding with the help of his nasty boys. After that, Sinister returns to kidnap Professor X, but his attempts are thwarted by the X-Men and Shard, who was here to look for her brother. At the end of the episode, Jean is shown imprisoned in Sinister's lair, and when she questions Sinister about the reason he kidnapped her, Apocalypse comes out of the shadows, revealing that Sinister and the Nasty Boys were working under his command. And if you remember, by the end of the original series, Apocalypse returned from exile with the help of Fabian Cortez's body. This suggests that the Mutant Massacre in the X-Men 97 animated series may be a strategy devised by Apocalypse to weaken the mutant population, with Sinister possibly being just a pawn in his larger game. Moreover, we also saw Apocalypse fighting Cable in the opening credits of the 6th episode, suggesting that Apocalypse might appear in this season. But what could Apocalypse's ultimate goal be? We can't say for certain, but we'd love to hear your theories. If Apocalypse is indeed behind the Genosha Mutant Massacre, what might be his motive for doing so? Bastion. Keeping in mind the way the X-Men 97 animated series is going and throwing unexpected curveballs at us in every episode, the fourth and the most likely suspect behind this mutant massacre is Bastion. If you aren't familiar with this character, just know that Bastion is also a prominent mutant hater and has a history of working alongside Trask and other mutant haters. He made his comic book appearance back in the year 1996 in the X-Men issue number 52. too, but he is yet to make his animated debut, and this might just be the perfect opportunity to introduce him. In fact, we already caught a glimpse of Bastion in the 4th episode of the X-Men 97 animated series. When Forge and Storm walk into his workshop, we come across several pictures of Forge. We saw him with the X-Factor team, a photograph of him looking at the beach. But the one picture that concerns us the most is the 3rd picture, where he's in his military outfit with arms around a man in a lab coat and another man whose face has been cut out because of the beach photo. And the man whose face we can't see was wearing a costume similar to Bastion in the comics. Moreover, the final episodes of the series are titled Tolerance is Extinction, suggesting they are going to adapt the Extinction Agenda storyline. However, we think there's more likelihood of adapting the Zero Tolerance storyline than the Extinction Agenda. In the Zero Tolerance storyline, Bastion allies himself with Val Cooper and wages war against mutants. Although it was a completely different storyline, the makers can definitely take inspiration from the story and include Bastion in the finale of X-Men 97 Season 1. Also, since we have seen Val Cooper only in a positive light thus far, it will be wild if they reveal that all this time, Val was working for Bastion and was primary driver behind the Genosha Mutant Massacre. Moreover, Val was present in Genosha during the Sentinel attack. And surprisingly, she did not have any injuries on her. Something sounds fishy, right? Cassandra Nova. The last suspect on our list is Cassandra Nova because she was responsible for a similar mutant massacre in Genosha in the comics. If you aren't familiar with Cassandra Nova, just think of her as the evil twin of Charles Xavier, who is 1,000 times more powerful than him. During one storyline, Cassandra Nova tracked down Bolver Tras's nephew and took him to a deserted island that housed a master mold, responsible for producing wild Sentinels. Unlike the original Sentinels who were restricted by size, these wild Sentinels could take any shape and size to get rid of their mutant enemies. These Sentinels evolved independently and only followed commands given by Trask's DNA. Thus, Cassandra Nova uses her powers to duplicate Trask's DNA and uses it to command the Sentinels to launch a vicious attack on Genosha. This massacre was nothing like the mutants had seen before. The surprise assault did not even give the X-Men a fighting chance, and Genosha's population went from 16 million to 0 in a span of a few minutes. However, Wolverine and Cyclops managed to capture Cassandra and brought her to their lair. Logan even ruptured her vocal cords to prevent her from commanding the Sentinels, but her rapid healing allowed her to recover quickly and overpower the X-Men. She went on to gain control of Charles' cerebra, aiming to exterminate all mutants on Earth. But before she could execute her plan, Emma Frost intervened and snapped her neck, only for her to recover quickly. Thus, Professor X stepped in and killed her with his own hands. Since Cassandra Nova is already rumored to appear in the Deadpool and Wolverine movie, it might just be the perfect chance to prime the audience before they are introduced to her live-action version. Moreover, this could also set Cassandra Nova as the main villain of the 2nd season of the X-Men 97 animated series. If that happens, we promise you are in for a treat because there are multiple storylines in the comics that involve Cassandra, and all of them are pure bangers. Marvelous verdict. Although we talked about everyone we think might be responsible for this mutant massacre on the basis of comics, there is still a high possibility that the makers would go completely wild and introduce a character that we never even thought about. Since Sinister is the big bad of the season, we are sure the character that turns out to be the mastermind behind this attack will go on to become the main antagonist of the 2nd season. So, who do you think that individual can be? Do let us know your theories in the comments below. With that being said, if you like our content, like it and subscribe if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone!